started that one of the cases that was listed as a public meeting is actually a public hearing for this evening. That's correct, Connie? I think you confirmed
Yes.
that just before we started the meeting?
Yes, that's correct. Correct. That's the 38 Bulkley.
Okay, so from here, we're going to take the cases a little out of order from the agenda because we learned just prior to the meeting that the agenda is not completely correct. So we're going to go to number 8 on our agenda, which is 38 Bulkley Avenue, and that is a public hearing. Connie went and double checked the records from last month. Connie, I appreciate you checking it on such quick notice.
No problem.
So this is actually a continued public, no, a new public, thank you, a new public hearing. So this is for case 2020-0211, a new public hearing for 38 Bulkley. Pete, if you could.
Yes, an application to review a site plan submitted by Anthony Joffrey III, Esquire, on behalf of Mason Street STS LLC for property located at 38 Bulkley Avenue, Portchester, New York, known as designated as Section 136.78, Block 1, Lot 10. Application filed under the current form-based zoning code. Interested persons will be afforded the opportunity to be heard. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. Can I have a second?
Second, Tav. Sorry.
Connie, when you're ready, call the roll.
Sure. Alzate?
Yes.
Baxter?
Yeah.
Cooperine?
Yes, yes.
Espinosa?
Yes.
Passarelli?
Yes.
Carolla?
Yes.
Okay, public hearing is open.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you very much. Good evening. This is Daniel Patrick from the law firm Cuddy and Fager in White Plains.
Good evening.
I'm here on behalf of the owner, Mason Maine STS LLC. I'm joined this evening by Jim White on behalf of the ownership. I'm also joined by Pierre Sayers, and the architect for the project. Brian Dempsey, the traffic engineer for the project, and Tony Joffrey from Cuddy and Fager as well. So this matter has been before this commission twice in January. It's January 6th and 25th meeting. Since last appearing, we have submitted additional materials related to the 12 space parking variance that was granted in 1994 for this property, as well as a diagram showing the available parking layout at the adjacent property. The applicant also appeared before the DRC last week, which identified no issues or concerns with the project. For the benefit of the public, I'll just give a quick recap and background on the proposed. This is a very simple application. It's an application seeking site plan approval for the reuse of the former dialysis center as a place of worship for the El Shaddai Church of God, which is relocating from its current location at the Polish United Club, just a few blocks away. This application involves wholly interior renovations to the existing two-story, 8,300 square foot building, known as Building B on the plans submitted. And the only exterior plans or renovations are the addition of a new bicycle rack in front of the building. The new place of worship proposes 165 interior seats, as well as some other minor changes to the interior spaces to accommodate the church's relocation. The church's typical operations include its main services on Sunday mornings and evenings. It will also include approximately 11 staff members at the church during Monday administrative purposes. There are food drives in the adjacent parking lot on Monday evenings, and there are prayer services on Tuesday evenings. The atypical events include, additional events around the holidays, as well as up to 6 weddings throughout the year. The proposed reuse generates very little traffic due to the majority of the trips to and from the site occurring either during off-peak or by other methods of transportation, such as walking or the shuttle bus that is employed by the church. The applicant includes 12 off-street parking spaces at the adjacent property, which has direct access to the rear of the property. This allows the church members and the church employees to park off street and walk directly to the church, which is a significant improvement for the church as well as the community from the current operations at the Polish Club, which includes no off-street parking. The adjacent parking lot has been continuously providing 12 parking spaces in accordance with an area variance that was granted in 1994. That parking variance granted a variance for 12 spaces on the condition that the property provide 12 additional or 12 alternative parking spaces within 500 feet of the premises. As indicated, the owner of the property has been maintaining these 12 spaces at the adjacent property for the duration of the existence of that area, that parking variance. The new code requires that a place of worship of this size provide 13 parking spaces or 13.5 parking spaces. So the applicant is requesting, in addition to the site plan approval, a parking waiver for 10%, which would allow for 10%, which would be the one parking space which is necessary, which is the difference between the 13.5 parking spaces required and the 12 parking spaces that are being provided adjacent to the property in accordance with the parking variance. The applicant submits that this requested waiver as well as the site plan approval for this reuse is de minimis, as there will be no significant impacts to the community. There's sufficient parking along the streets and throughout the adjacent neighborhood at the public parking lots, and just the overall low intensity and beneficial use of the church's relocation of this property. So I'd like to turn it back over to the commission. As indicated, I've also have Brian Dempsey and Peter Serres in here. If you guys have any, this commission or the public has any questions regarding traffic or design.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear from Mike and Justin from AKRF.
I just think from last time, I know, Michael, I think you asked for more of a breakdown of how people are arriving to the place of worship. In the memo, which I think you have, I broke down the number of people walking, biking, driving, taxiing church vans to show how they go from 152 parishioners on kind of a typical Sunday down to 23 vehicles. So that information is there for you. The other thing that was brought up again was with parking. For those 12 spaces, the applicant did provide a kind of a conceptual layout that shows 12 vehicles are able to park on that Bush Avenue lot, while the warehouse and their vehicles can have their vehicles on a lot too. We weren't sure if they'd have to move those or put them in the garage to fit 12 vehicles. That's not the case. So the 12 vehicles are able to be accommodated on that parking lot on Bush Avenue. I think those were the two outstanding things we were following up on since the last time we discussed this.
Right. Thank you. Justin?
No site work on this one, so nothing for us to comment on here.
Okay. The new public hearing. Let me invite Connie, let me know if there's anyone interested in talking to the Planning Commission about 38 Bulkley, excuse me.
Currently, I don't see any hands.
Okay. All right, just making sure.
Yes.
So questions, comments from the Planning Commission to the applicant or to Mike and Justin from AKRF?
Mike, what is the minimum number of parking lots that should be really available for this application?
So there's no official striping of spaces, but just based on what was shown and what could fit, 12 is reasonable.
Okay.
But there is just, there is no official striping, it's just more of a layout where I think even if you go there today, you could see vehicles are parked in a similar situation that they would propose to use on Sundays. But they are able to show 12 on a conceptual plan with adequate space. And again, this is also something where this is not a parking lot that would have in and outs going out concurrently. It would be all your vehicles coming in at the start of services and then all your vehicles leaving. So there's not a lot of turnover either.
Okay.
But there, at least concept shows you could fit the 12 spaces there and keep the, I don't know if it's delivery vans or whatever vans that are being used on site in their spots.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Jerry. Anyone else? Questions for the applicant or AKRF?
Yeah, Mike.
Go for it, Pete.
Well, parking. Mike Beatty, did you actually take a physical look at that parking lot on a Sunday morning?
Not on a Sunday morning, no.
Okay. There are many Service Master vehicles in that lot. There is an area in the middle of the lot that they've identified in their drawing that could be used, and you could probably fit maybe seven or so vehicles. But Service Master has their vehicles parked in front of garages. They had the vehicle parked that encroaches the driveway coming into the building. And I've got pictures. If you want me to show you, I could give me access and I'll put up some pictures. I don't think there's 12 parking spaces in that lot, that you can make 12 parking spaces in that lot. I'd like to make a recommendation, a proposal. I would like to send this over to zoning to review the existing variance. The variance was approved in 1994. Since 1994, this property has changed hands 2 times. Is the current owner still aware of this variance? Is the property owner paying anything to this person? Maybe it's a church. Well, now it's a church. Maybe they're doing it for nothing. Fine. But is the current owner of 3539 Bush in compliance with their site plan approval? I think there's a lot. I mean, that's the only thing I have with this. I would feel much more comfortable if we could have zoning weigh in on this and resolve and come back to us and say, yeah, that's good. We're okay. They could fit 12 spots in there, but I can't see how it could happen, but that's my recommendation.
Thanks, Pete. Before we go to other questions, Mr. Patrick, what's the story with Service Master?
They're currently using the parking lot because it's, they own the parking lot. The church holds an agreement with Service Master, the owner of that property, to allow them space 24/7 to park vehicles as necessary. But as the church is not a tenant at this point, there is currently no need for Service Master to move their vehicles. But those vehicles, as I understand, can be moved inside to the building and out of the way to allow for those 12 parking spaces.
So we need to see a letter from the owner of 3539 Bush that this agreement is in place, that they will move these vehicles, identify the 12 spaces. We need to see this, or not we, the village attorney needs to see this and confirm that that is in fact the case. So, but my other proposal still stands, but going back to zoning with this.
Right.
Mr. Copeland, I would just add, I understand your concern, and it's a valid one. The documentation to Mr. Soretto to his satisfaction, but this is not something that really warrants the Zoning Board of Appeals to weigh in on additional variance. So long as we can demonstrate that those spaces exist, I think which should be sufficient for a site plan consideration. And I remind you again, as Mr. Patrick indicated, that we don't need to provide the spaces all on that lot. That is what's being done right now. The variance requires that the 12 spaces be provided within 500 feet. So long as we demonstrate that, and we can certainly do that to the satisfaction of your traffic engineer or to Mr. Soretto, then that should be sufficient for your purposes, I believe.
I think I asked for this 2 meetings ago and got a little pushback from you, but that's what we want to see. We want to see something in writing from the property owner that they concur that they're going to have that lot opened the 2 or 3 nights a week, that you're going to use it, and that there's going to be space.
Is that
We can certainly provide something to your satisfaction.
That's an arrangement document? What is that? A terms and conditions or a usage
I mean,
agreement?
I don't know what the right proper term
Okay.
is. Maybe Tony could, what the
Yeah.
legal term is.
Okay, well, I think Mr. Joffrey hears what we're trying to get. So I think Mr. Joffrey can interpret what we're talking about.
Certainly. We have an agreement, and maybe what we could provide is something that addresses the comments that Mr. Coperine specifically identified, a memorandum of agreement or something along those lines that specifically hit those points. We'd be happy to provide that to you.
Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay.
Any other commissioners that have questions for the applicant or Mike or Justin from AKRF? Actually, just Mike on this one. Okay.
Chairman Scarola, we have a hand raised.
This is for 38 Bulkley.
I believe so. Howie Rabikoff.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for recognizing me. I had some technological issues, as another member of the public did earlier this evening. Finding one's hand to raise in this event is a difficult thing to do, but I thank you for your patience and your recognizing me. We are stakeholders on Bulkley Avenue and have been for a number of years. I admit I am late to the party on this one, and I am playing catch up. Did I hear correctly that the potential number of occupants on site is 160 plus? And the potential required parking is 12? Is that correct in the same equation? I understand you may not choose to respond to me in this format. Thank you for listening. I would cite, if those numbers are close to being accurate, that this is a clear oversight of the new form-based zoning code, and it is not the first. I would suggest to you that parking on Bulkley Avenue is already strained. There are residents on both sides of that street that do not find the parking that they need for a number of reasons. The commuter parking that is currently not really a factor, but over history certainly is and will be again in the future, I hope we all agree, is strained. Street parking is utilized by commuters. Street parking is utilized by residents that have converted their garages to other purposes. And I would suggest that 12 parking spaces, if dedicated for 24/7, is not remotely adequate for a facility that could potentially hold 160 some odd people at any one given point in time. I understand you may be constrained by the new form-based zoning code, but at the very least, my point being that code could not clearly be meant for this applicant. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
No one else, Chairman.
Oh, okay. That's exactly what I was going to ask. Just to make sure. Sorry. Any other questions from the other commissioners to the applicant?
Mike. Mr. Patrick, the previous participant just mentioned about the parking. Is it going to be 7 days a week, those 12 spots dedicated to this church, or will it be a minimum, maximum? Could you please, elaborate on that?
The agreement between the church and the owner of that property is that those spaces will be available to them at all times.
All times. Would there also be any particular signage so when people do come from the church, they see this lot and know where to park and not to perhaps park in one of the spots where the service masters might be parking later on in the day?
Do not believe there will be signage, but I will defer to Brian Dempsey. He is the traffic and parking engineer on this to provide any additional information he has.
This is Brian Dempsey. There officially right now there wasn't going to be parking signage because the people attending church will know where they're going to be going. Similar to like at the Polish Center, there will be that will assist in the parking area during services if necessary to show them where to park. If you look at Google Maps, the street view, It shows, because it's an older photo when the dialysis center was there, it shows you how the other cars were parking with the vans and such from the master there. And we have some pictures of that we could show. And that's essentially how the 12 parking spaces we worked out with KRF are being shown.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments to the applicant or Mike from AKRF? Okay, regarding next steps, to the rest of the commissioners, this is, and Connie, thank you for your efforts. This is a new public hearing. So this is the first night of the public hearing stage. What's the commissioner's thoughts on next steps?
I'll make a motion. We adjourn the public hearing pending receipt of some information on parking.
Second. Tab.
Connie, can you call the roll?
Sure. Alzate,
Yes.
Baxter,
Yes.
Cooperine,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Passarelli,
Yes.
Gorola.
Yes.
Okay, the matter is adjourned till March 29th.
Okay, thank you.